I think we should begin to honor our guests here. So welcome everybody. My name is Emily, chef and coordinator of the Teaching Kitchen here at New York-Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital. Very pleased that you're all here joining us this morning on this very steamy, warm day. Hope you're staying inside and staying cool and refreshed. So welcome. We're working on the Heart Healthy Mediterranean favorites today. I'm thrilled to have Catherine joining us as our moderator. So Catherine will be reading your questions. And Catherine, if you'd like to get the chat box started so folks know where to input their questions, that would be great. Just ensure that the chat is to everyone and not just to panelists, since this is our webinar format. So, heart healthy Mediterranean favorites. Well, it's that time of year when the garden is brimming with fresh herbs and tomatoes and all kinds of great produce, peaches, apricots, anything, and everything seems to be growing around us here. We're very fortunate in the Hudson Valley to have lots of local farms and farmers markets that have that wonderful, abundant, fresh produce. So if you haven't made it to a farmer's market yet this year, it is worth going just to be inspired by the produce, right? This is the perfect time of year to go because it's just overflowing tables and, tumbling tomatoes and zucchinis and cucumbers and radishes and potatoes, and everything is just brimming. So it's a really nice time of year to check out a farmer's market, support your local farmers if you haven't, if you're not in the habit of doing so, or even just to have a look and see what's around. You may find, an herb that you're not used to cooking with, and you can always engage that, vendor with, what do I use this for? How do you cook with this? Because a lot of farmers are really great cooks too, because they have to know what to do with all their produce. So a lot of them are really kitchen savvy as well. So just a reminder to input your questions into the chat box if you have any throughout our program. And the other reason I'm really stressing the farmers and farmers markets today in particular is because of the Mediterranean lifestyle. I think, so often we think of the Mediterranean diet as simply being a way of eating, but it's so much more than that. It really is a lifestyle. It is a way of, it's a way of eating, but it's also a way of, being connected to one another. Movement is a really big part of it, of course. And then, getting close to the root of your food, the source and the roots of your food. That's another big part of it as well that I feel like is often overlooked when we think about the Mediterranean diet. It's a hyper local cuisine. So a lot of the foods that they're eating in the Mediterranean come from the Mediterranean, come from the surrounding areas. So local is just as important as, what the food is, because we don't really, if you're getting a food that's shipped from far away, it's not going to be as nutritive and nutrient dense as something that's grown, around you and it's hyper local. So those are just a few points I wanted to start off with. Of course, the diet itself consists of traditional cultures around the Mediterranean Sea and coupled with physical exercise. The diet itself is lots and lots of plants. You're going to hear me say that a lot. Whole grains and legumes, nuts and seeds, using our wonderful olive oil instead of maybe more traditional butter, less salt and more of an emphasis on herbs and spices to build flavor, and then limiting red meat. There's not a lot of red meat in the Mediterranean diet. It's mostly seafood based and lean meats. So definitely limiting that red meat. And then lean meats are okay. They're a part of the Mediterranean diet. So chicken and seafood, at least, 3 to 4 ounces twice a week. And some great sources, of course, are things like salmon and sardines and anchovies, all those cold water fish that contain those great omega-3 fatty acids that are really important for us, but also shrimp. Shrimp is a big part as well. And shrimp is nice because you can buy it frozen. It's very affordable. And you can sort of take out the amount that you need in order to cook it. So sometimes if you're just cooking for 1 or 2 people, or all of a sudden there's a big crowd, right? You can have that frozen bag of shrimp and just kind of take out what you need as needed. So I really like that about shrimp. Okay, so enough talking. We're going to start cooking. Our first recipe is going to be the roasted honey thyme apricots. And I did a little switcheroo on all of you. You're probably thinking, this is the biggest apricot I've ever seen. That's actually because it's a peach. So I feel like when I wrote this packet, a month ago, apricots were all around me. So I was really inspired by that. But it's a little harder to find apricots right now. I think I kind of missed the window. So here we are with a peach, and it's definitely peach season because these are abundant everywhere in the month of August, here in New York anyway. So I'm going to pull out the stem, and you can make this, this just goes to show a lot of these recipes are very flexible. Excuse me, I think I am getting a phone call on this phone, which I never do, but that's okay. Okay, here we go. So a lot of these fruits can be exchanged. So if you need apricots, you can use peaches. If you need peaches, you can use you can make these different kinds of changes if you want, and the peaches work really well. So when you're picking out a peach, how do you know if it's right? First of all, you can go ahead and smell it right where the stem was, and it should have that really nice light peachy fragrance. Then you want to feel it. So you're just going to gently press very, very gently and see if it sort of yields to the touch, right? That's sort of the way to tell, is it kind of gently catches your finger. And then this one smells good. It feels slightly soft. These are going to be baked, so they're going to be, even juicier and sweet. And then I cut along the line. The nice thing about apricots and peaches is that you can just kind of follow the line. So I go through the stem, I cut along the line, and then I just twist, just kind of roll it around. Then you can twist to open it. And then this pit in the middle can be really hard to get out. So what I like to do then is hold it on its side, cut it in half again, and then kind of twist it off the pit, right? So there's different kinds of peaches. There's freestone and clinging. I think they're called clinging, the ones that the pits cling in the middle. So you can use either one. There's white peaches, there's yellow peaches. And you can see here I've chopped up a bunch, right? So here are our beautiful peaches. They are ready to roast. Any questions or comments, Catherine?
Chef Emily, John is asking, what would you suggest for someone attempting to be vegan to get more protein into their diet?
Oh, that's a great question, John. Okay. Well, there are lots of great vegan sources of protein. You can definitely rely on soy. Tofu and tempeh is extremely high in protein, but your legumes are going to be your best friends. So your chickpeas, your beans, your lentils, your all kinds of different beans out there, pinto, red kidney, cannellini. Try to include some kind of bean in every meal if you can. And they're really high in fiber as well. So those are, that whole legume family, that's going to be a great source, the soybeans I mentioned, of protein. And then additionally, you want to think about your nuts and seeds. Those are another really good source of protein as well. So you may not want to eat tofu first thing in the morning, but you can, have a little bit of almond butter on a piece of whole wheat toast or something like that with banana. That's a great way to get protein in at the start of your day as well. And then there's a lot of vegan protein powders. I'm okay with those, as long as you check the ingredients and you make sure that there aren't a lot of added sugars and other things like that. That can be a nice way to kind of supplement your protein. But there's not a lot of people who struggle with a protein deficiency in the United States. There's, I think, we tend to do pretty well on protein, but you do have to be thoughtful about it if you are pursuing a vegan diet. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the vegan diet, it's no animals of any kind. So that includes seafood, any kind of fish, and then meats as well. I hope that's helpful. I feel like I'm forgetting a category, but it'll come to me. I'll keep mulling on it. All right, so I'm going to get these into the oven. We're going to add a little bit of water, just a splash. We're going to add some olive oil and some honey, about a 1/4 cup of honey. Now, for our vegan friends out there, if you are not eating honey because it is an animal product, right? You could use maple syrup instead. That would be fine. That would be delicious, actually. And we're going to kind of whisk those together using the fork. I have a lemon here. We're going to add a little fresh lemon juice. And then we have some thyme. We're just whisking that together. And when you're roasting these, you can see I kind of nested them in here. You know, you don't want to pile them up so high that they're not going to get a little nice browning on it. But you do, you know, you don't want them to be so spread out either. I kind of like them in this in-between space where they have enough room, but not, you know, so much room that they're going to kind of get totally caramelized. So I'm adding our fresh thyme. And when you're picking off your fresh thyme, there's a little soft spot at the top, this little bendy soft spot. Grab it right below that and then pull against the grain to get those thyme leaves, and then you can pick the ones off at the top. Because otherwise, if you try to just hold it all the way at the top and pull, it's going to snap, right? So you can do it the other way too, though. If it snaps, right, then you can hold it a little bit lower than where it snapped and try to recuperate and pull against the grain.
Chef
Any
Emily,
other questions?
another question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Sue is asking, can you use agave in place of honey?
Oh, that's a good point, Sue. Thank you for mentioning that. You could definitely use agave instead of honey. That would be fine. Yeah. And that would have like more of a neutral flavor. I think that would work nicely. Thanks, Sue. All right. We're ready for our next recipe now that that's in the oven. I always try to include something a little indulgent when we're talking about heart health in relationship to the Mediterranean diet. I find that often especially if we're so focused on our heart health, we tend to fear food and we tend to fear what it's going to do to us. So how can we create recipes that we can actually enjoy, feel good about eating, have a sweet treat that we know is also going to nourish the body? So that's kind of why we're starting with dessert today. Because, you know, even though if you look at the Mediterranean diet pyramid, even though sweets are at the very top and there's something to be enjoyed kind of, you know, respectfully and in moderation, they are something to be enjoyed. So really taking that time to create something delicious with summer fruit. And it doesn't have to be, you know, a heavy peach cobbler with tons of butter and sugar and all that stuff, right? It can be simply roasted on a smear of, you know, yogurt like we're going to be doing today with some, you know, toasted almonds on top. And it's simple and it's delicious and you feel like you've had a super indulgent, decadent dessert. And in reality, you've had fruit and yogurt kind of gussied up. All right, any other questions?
Chef Emily, just to return to the peach recipe, Barry is asking, what about another fresh herb similar to thyme?
Oh, Barry, I like where your head is at. I certainly know we could play around with different herbs for this one. Because it is being roasted, I would you know, stay with kind of the woodier herbs. So that put you at like, thyme is a little more gentle, I think, than rosemary. Rosemary tends to be like, woo, I'm adding a lot of rosemary. But I think rosemary could be a nice kind of flavor pairing with this. You could, you know, just use a smaller amount and chop it up nice and small and kind of sprinkle it over the top. Rosemary would be really nice. If you wanted to do a fresh herb, you could roast it without any herb. And then I think it could be good with either basil or mint on top. Yeah. All right. So we're ready for our next recipe here. We're going to start on the summer shrimp peel off. I really like this dish because everything goes into the pot. You put the lid on and you walk away. So it's nice and easy. We're going to start by sauteing up our fennel and our onions. So these are our first two veggies going in here. I realize I'm using fennel twice this week. And I think that's like my instinctive nature telling me that fennel is something we should be enjoying right now. And that's really because fennel is an extremely cooling vegetable. So what does that mean? It means that when your body enjoys it, it helps to kind of cool things down in the body. You know, we all know, like when you eat a hot chili pepper or something like that, it spices you up, right? You get nice and warm, or ginger warms you up. but we don't really think about what foods cool us down. Maybe we'll think about like a watermelon or a cucumber or something like that, right? But fennel is a very nice and cooling food as well. So I'm going to start just by slicing up some onion. You can dice it or slice it. Go for really thin slices straight across. Or you can, go for the smaller dice. Again, everything's just going to get tossed into the pot and sauteed a little bit. So it's pretty flexible, easy recipe. Nothing has to be a certain way for this one. You just want everything more or less the same size, right? So we're going to start with that. I have my big pot saucepan here heating up. And I'm going to add our extra virgin olive oil. Now, of course, that's one of the main pillars of the Mediterranean diet. It's loaded with the monounsaturated fats, which are extremely good for heart health, as well as vitamin E, also another heart healthy nutrient, vitamin. And it just tastes amazing. Let's face it, extra virgin olive oil is just the best. So there's different kinds of flavor profiles when it comes to olive oil. I'm just going to work on cutting this fennel. So I usually get rid of the top because it's a little too stringy. I go at an angle. You can save this for your veggie stock if you are, feeling ambitious and want a kitchen project. You can put it in the freezer until you have enough kind of odds and ends, and then you can make your own veggie stock. And then feel free to, I think I put a peeler around here somewhere. Where did I put that yellow peeler? It's disappeared from me. All right, well, you don't really need to do this, but if you wanted to, you could peel the, of course, here it is. It's always right in front of your face, right? You open the refrigerator, where is that? It's usually right there. So you can use the peeler to kind of peel off any brown spots of your fennel. Those of you who attended my class earlier this week know this trick already. But instead of breaking off those big outer, layers to get rid of the browning, just a nice little peel around will do just fine. And that way you can really preserve and save as much of the fennel as possible to eat because it is so yummy. All right, now we're going to cut it in half. So cut it in half, and don't forget to smell it. It smells like licorice. It smells really good. You can now see this core in here. Bring this a little bit closer so you can see that, right? See that core at the bottom there? We're going to wedge that out because it takes a little too long to cook. So I cut this into quarters, go at an angle, kind of wedge that out. I don't think that's a verb, to wedge something out, but I think I just made it one. Catherine is often my editor and grammar corrector. So Catherine, feel free to weigh in.
Now, I agree with use of the word wedge as a verb.
Okay, thank you.
And Chef
Right.
Emily, I just wanted to let you know that Denise commented when you were talking about fennel cooling you down. She loves that valuable tip.
Oh, thanks, Denise. So you can eat fennel raw or cooked. Another great thing about it. And it does have a strong kind of anise licorice-like flavor. So if you're not a huge fan of that, you're definitely going to want to cook it. It's much stronger when it's raw than when it's cooked. Once you cook it, that kind of licorice flavor really mellows out a lot. And especially if you saute it the way we're going to do that here today, it's going to kind of caramelize and get sweet. So it's a lovely, simply braised fennel is, one of my favorite things. I definitely don't make it enough, but it's really, really good. So we're going to pop all that in our pot, place it in there. Give this a good stir. We've got our onions, we've got our fennel. Kind of work that down. You do want them to soften quite a bit. You don't want them to be completely hard, like when we put them in. They should, cook until they're soft. So a couple of minutes. We're going to add a couple more things in there. Of course, I feel like I never cook a shrimp dish without garlic and red pepper flakes. It's just one of those flavor combinations that works so well because shrimp can be a little shrimpy sometimes. You want to make sure that you kind of work with its flavors and unite them in the pot. So we're going to have our garlic cloves. We're going to press, take off the skins here. Whoop, slippery, where'd it go? There we go. 1, 2. And if you're not comfortable doing that with your knife, find a can of beans and give it a good smash. That'll work just as well. And then you don't have that risk of, potentially cutting yourself. So if that's something you would prefer, I like to use the knife because it's what I'm used to. But if you're not used to it, certainly use a different method. So we're taking off the exterior. You can use your chopped up garlic that's already, in the refrigerator in a jar. If that's what you have, that's what you want to use. Of course, many of you have heard me say this, there's nothing quite like the fresh stuff. So even if you are, using the stuff from the jar, that will work, but it's not going to be completely the same kind of, flavor. This is our garlic from our garden. And garlic has wonderful properties as well. There's, I think there's really a lot of logic to the fact that most Mediterranean dishes have a lot of garlic and have a lot of onions. A lot of garlic and a lot of onions. The onions, we didn't really talk about them. They're such an understated vegetable. They are really high in antioxidants, particularly an antioxidant called quercetin. Some of you may see quercetin sold as like a supplement on its own, but that, sorry, I was getting a little like ringing from the scooper there. But that quercetin has great antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties. So onions are really good for that. And then garlic, of course, has wonderful properties as well. So it's a no-brainer to add into your dishes. It's usually fairly easy to work with. It keeps for a long time. If your garlic is sprouted, some garlic, you keep it and then it starts to sprout like a little green sprout. You can still use it if you want to. Some folks find that sprout, what's called the germ, is a little bit hard to digest. So if you have any digestive sensitivities, you can slice the garlic clove in half and actually just pull the germ out. So feel free to do that. You don't have to throw your garlic out. You can still use it. All right, so I'm gonna add in some red pepper flakes. And these are also from our garden from last year. I dried up the peppers, ground up the flakes, and we've been using them all season. It's been great. And if you feel like drying your chili peppers and giving it a try, it's really not that difficult. I just let it sit out on a cooling rack, right? So I got like one of those cookie cooling racks. I sliced the little hot red peppers in half so that the air could kind of get into the middle of them. And I let them sit out on the counter and dry for 2 or 3 weeks until they were completely dry. Put them in my little coffee grinder or my spice grinder. Don't use your coffee grinder for spices and coffee. Otherwise, you're going to get a very interesting coffee blend. But it worked out really well. So I certainly recommend this time of year, start thinking about what spices and herbs do you want around for the next few months, because they're not going to be around forever, right? Our basil is going to go out of town. There's going to be quite a few things that start to disappear at the end of September and beginning of October. So make your pestos, freeze your pestos, make your sauces, freeze them, so you can enjoy the bounty of summer for a few extra months. So we've got the red pepper flakes, the garlic in there. We're going to add the tomatoes. So I have some beautiful chopped up tomatoes here, about 2 cups of that. And you can use rice or quinoa, either one. I have some quinoa here. The quinoa is pretty quick and easy to cook. So I'm just going to add that in. So I chopped up my tomatoes ahead of time. And let's see, we want about 1 cup of quinoa. I think that's probably the rest of the bag here. But quinoa is not traditional to the Mediterranean diet. I will just go ahead and put that out there. It is a whole grain. So yep, that's exactly 1 cup. Perfect. It is a whole grain. So, it does have that going for it. It's actually botanically, it's a seed, not a grain, but it's whole. It's in its entire form. It's loaded with protein, fiber. But quinoa originally is from South America, from Bolivia. There's a lot of quinoa there, but we use it a lot in North America as well now. So we've got that quinoa in there. We've got the tomatoes in there. We're going to add some wine. So about a cup of wine going in here. Please do me a favor and don't use cooking wine. I feel like it is such a waste. It often contains a lot of salt. First of all, your cooking wines are usually loaded with salt. And it just doesn't have a very good flavor. So, you know, you don't have to use your finest bottle of white, but certainly something that's palatable and that you enjoy and is budget friendly. That is really what you're going to want to try to get. So we're going to boil that for about 3 minutes. Then we're going to add our stock. I have some chicken stock here, and then we're going to put everything together and boil that for about 15 minutes or so. Oh, I forgot I have to get a skillet out for the shrimp. Any questions or comments, Catherine?
Chef Emily, Danielle is asking, is chopped garlic a good alternative to fresh?
Yeah, Danielle, you could usually use, the stuff in a jar that's already chopped up. Yeah, sure.
And another question, would you suggest using barley in place of the quinoa? Would that work?
Ooh, that's a really interesting idea. The barley would, it would take longer to cook. So you may just have to adjust your liquids accordingly to make sure that the pot doesn't dry out. You could probably use barley, like a pearled barley. Yeah, that could be good. Nice suggestion. I think millet could work as well. Anything else?
That's all for now. Thank you.
Okay, let's check on our peaches in here. Oh my gosh, they smell so good. Okay, and I want them to soften a little bit more, so let's let them keep going. All right, so you just want to bring this kind of up to simmer. Oh, it's already simmering. That was fast. Then you're going to add the rest of your liquid. We're going to cover this and let it cook. And then we're going to get our shrimp ready. So you could, if you wanted to kind of, make this dish even easier, you could take your shrimp and about 5 minutes from the end of the cooking time. So right now it's going to simmer and cook for about 15 minutes. So you would simmer it for 10 minutes. You could just take your shrimp and put it in if you wanted to make this very, very simple. I like to make things a little more flavorful by bringing in some color on that shrimp. So this again was frozen. I thawed it in the refrigerator overnight, and I'm just going to saute it in a pan with a little bit of oil. Nothing else is needed when you've got such nice fresh flavors. So I'm heating up my cast iron pan here. I've got my shrimp ready to go. It's best to try to, make sure that your seafood is really, really dry before you put it in a hot pan of oil for a few reasons. If it's not dry, it's going to sizzle, it's going to simmer, it's going to splatter everywhere, right? So that's one reason. Another reason is your dry shrimp will actually sear better and have better browning than kind of your wet shrimp, because otherwise it's just going to steam and not really do much. So you want to make sure you get a good sizzle when you hit the pan. You want to make sure you heat up your oil enough, and then you just want to make sure your shrimp is kind of spread out so that each little shrimp has its own space in the pool to kind of get some color and get some browning. All right, and we can't cook something from the Mediterranean diet for heart health without including fresh herbs. So we've got some parsley here. We've got some mint. We're just going to take off the thickest stems of the parsley, then bunch this up and chop it up. So parsley is so much more than just a garnish. It's really, herbs are, I always say herbs are like, secret agents. They're like these nutritional powerhouses that no one pays much attention to, but they're extremely nutrient dense. I mean, if you were to eat like you wouldn't do this because it wouldn't necessarily taste that good, but if you were to eat a quantity of parsley, the same as you would like a kale salad, the parsley would probably have more nutrition than a kale salad, per weight. So I guess that's nutrient density, right? It's like per square inch, how much nutrition does this herb have? And parsley has a lot of nutrition. The mint is lovely for flavor and nutrition as well. A lot of vitamin A in mint. good antioxidants. It's really nice for digestion. It also has that nice cooling element, right? So we've got some nice cooling herbs going in here. And again, I just picked the leaves off the stem for the mint. It smells so good. Catherine, can you smell it? You're just gonna chop that up.
Yes, I can actually.
Just imagining it, right?
Chef Emily, a question from Karen in terms of a substitution for this recipe.
Sure.
Any suggestions to substitute the shrimp with chicken work?
Interesting. Okay, so Karen, I think you could definitely make some substitutions. I'm trying to think, like, from a flavor standpoint, what would work well. I think you could add some cooked, chopped up chicken to this. I think that would be okay. Let me think what else would be good. Scallops. I know we're trending towards the seafood again. Scallops would be yummy. Clams would be yummy. Ooh, what else? You could probably make this with like a tofu as well. Just saute your tofu and add it in at the end. That could be interesting. Or if you don't want to, leave the shrimp to the side. You don't, just make what's in the pot and then serve it with your favorite, protein of choice. So you don't, you definitely don't need to add that shrimp in there if you don't want to, All right. Other questions or comments?
Chef Emily, no further questions.
Great. So these are pinking up nicely. I realized I didn't add any salt to my dish, so I'm going to amend that. I'm not going to add much because we've got that chicken stock in there, and store-bought chicken stock tends to be pretty salty. So let's just let that do its magic, and then we can see how we feel about it. Okay. Just checking on our timing here. Okay, we're good. So we have 15 more. Perfect. So we've got that going in our skillet. We're cooking the shrimp. We're going to add that to the pot and everything with the herbs. And then I just want to finish up with our final recipe, which is oh my gosh, herbed pea ricotta. So I'm calling this ricotta because it's kind of like a cheesy substitute. So, there is definitely small amounts of dairy in the Mediterranean diet, and in relationship to heart health, it seems to be an okay thing to enjoy once in a while, but some dairy can be really heavy on those saturated fats. So I wanted to give you guys kind of a cheesy fix without the saturated fat that comes with a lot of dairy. So we're going to be using my favorite, soaked cashews, right? So here they are, they've been soaking, they have their little, looks like a little aquarium of cashews. They have their little water bath here. And we're using raw cashews, right? So not toasted, not roasted, not salted, definitely not salted, raw cashews. We're gonna wanna strain those off, so I will need my strainer for that. I seem to have forgotten a few tools today, I apologize. All right, and straining that water off, we have that soaked raw cashew. Now, what is this gonna do? This is gonna provide a lot of body to the, if you tasted this on its own, it's not that flavorful, it's kind of neutral, but it's a good carrier for flavors. So we're gonna process those smoked cashews would be good though. Those soaked cashews, here we go. And we're gonna add a couple other things in here. We're adding again with the fresh garlic.
And Chef Emily?
Yes, Catherine.
Can you clarify how long do you soak the cashews? And I also have another question from Margaret.
Okay, great. So you soak the cashews overnight in cold water. You can put them in the refrigerator and soak them that way for a few days. Or if you're just going to soak them overnight, it's fine to leave them out on the counter. If you don't have space in your fridge, that's fine too. But at least 8 hours on your cashew soak. If you want to make this and you forgot to soak your cashews, there is a trick. You can boil up some water and then pour it over the cashews and let them soak that way, just for about 30 minutes. So hot boiling water, pour it over your cashews, set it down, let it soak at least 30 minutes. That will work too. One of the reasons I like the longer soak is that when you boil, when you boil water and pour it over something, the heat will kill some of the, kill some of the nutrients, not all of them. There's still going to be tons of nutrients in here. But a way to ensure that you are, getting the most out of your cashews is to give them that long soak. So
And
in
Chef
goes
Emily?
the garlic. And yes, the question you said.
I'm sorry, just real quick
Yep.
to return to the previous
Please.
recipe, just for a moment. Margaret is asking, would this work without the white wine?
Yeah, I think it would work without the white wine. I think it would be okay. The white wine adds some acidity, and it adds that white wininess. But definitely you can make adjustments if you want to avoid white wine for whatever reason. The way I would adjust it is by leaving it out and then adding some freshly squeezed lemon juice at the end.
Thank you, very good.
Okay, so back to our little ricotta style cheese. We've got the garlic in there. I'm using a little bit of miso paste, but you can use salt instead if you don't want to run out and buy miso just for this. We're going to use some green peas. So you can use fresh or frozen. The frozen ones actually work really well and they taste great. So I get, the frozen peas and thaw them out. So we're going to let that go in there. We're going to add some olive oil, more olive oil everywhere, right? Some fresh lemon juice. And again, we're not adding salt because we added that miso, but if you don't want to use miso, you can use the salt instead. It is important to have some element of sodium in this dish, I think. Otherwise, if you're avoiding salt for high blood pressure or for heart health or something like that, certainly, do what you have to do. But it's good to try to use something that's going to give it that little extra flavor. You don't have to use much. As you can see, there's only a teaspoon of miso in here. So miso or salt. Miso is not a traditional Mediterranean food either. It is from Asia, I think from Japan. But we're using it today to give you guys kind of a salt alternative. We've got lots of herbs going in here too, a cup of fresh basil leaves. So you know what, I'm going to start off by getting that going, pulsing this all together. All right. You want to just combine this until everything's really fluffy and smooth. You may need one of these great little tools, little scooper, kind of usher things down the sides. Let's add our basil, about a cup of fresh basil. We have another 1/4 cup for the garnish if you want. All right, and I turned the shrimp off. I'm going to add our fresh herbs. Yeah, let's add those into the shrimp just to get them off the board here. All right, and this is it. This is done. So it's very, very simple. You're going to serve this with your most beautiful, most delicious, most ripe tomatoes that you can find, right? This is the season for them. And let this run for a little, let it get really fluffy and kind of that nice ricotta texture. Okay, so I've got some tomatoes there. I'm just going to slice these up nice and easy. Let's see here. Right, so a tomato will respond well to a very sharp knife. It will also respond well to a serrated knife. So if you're finding that your knives aren't sharp enough and you can't quite cut through those tomatoes, use your bread knife. It's going to work out really well too. All right, this is what I'm looking for. So pretty. Oh, it smells so good. Okay, so you've got your sort of ricotta cheese-like substitute using lots of fresh nuts. You've got your protein in there from the cashews and the peas as well. And I have some little cherry tomatoes here. So you can either kind of arrange this and do like a tomato mozzarella style salad and kind of put it on each one, or you can kind of dollop it up in the middle. Another verb, Catherine, I'm gonna have you check for me. Dollop it up, right? So put that right in the middle. And you can kind of scatter your tomatoes around. Okay, so this is very simple. It's a nice alternative to the very traditional tomato caprese salad, which is, you know, full of mozzarella cheese, which is delicious, but lots of saturated fat. So here's something you could try that's a little bit different, a little bit lighter, using nice fresh garden herbs. All right, let's check on our other dish here, our pilaf. So we're using a lot of Mediterranean favorites, especially the tomato. Right, this is almost done. Let that cook a little bit longer. And then our peaches are almost done as well. Let's check on those. Questions or comments while we kind of wrap everything up here?
Yes, Chef Emily, from the recipe before, Pamela is asking about fennel. If you don't like fennel, what's a good substitute?
Yeah, so Pamela, fennel, I totally understand. It has that distinct licorice and anise flavor that can be a little overwhelming to some. So certainly if you don't want to use fennel, you can leave it out, or you can add a different vegetable in here. This recipe works well with eggplant. It works well with zucchini. What else have I made this with? I mean, the fennel and the shrimp are really, you know, kind of designed to be buddies, but it would work well with other vegetables as well. I think primarily eggplant or zucchini or summer squash, you know, any of those would work out pretty well. Questions or comments? Anything else? I'm gonna plate up our peaches.
Chef Emily, just some comments that it all looks delicious.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I hope you all give this recipe a try. Does anyone want to share which recipe they think they're going to try to make? And if anyone wants to put that in the chat box. So here's our Greek vanilla yogurt. So I'm using this with my peaches. I like to kind of mound it up on the plate and then use the back of the spoon to do a nice smear across, right? This is like very restaurant style, but it looks pretty. And again, we're indulging without being super, you know, over the top. And then you can just take your roasted fruit and plate that up. Okay. You can add some toasted almonds on top, right? So here's your, who knew fruit and yogurt could be so delicious, right? You know, the angle is always a little tough with these lights. All right, so we're almost done. We've got our final dish to pull together. This is still really hot, so I have to make sure I move it so that I don't accidentally try to move it with my hands. Sometimes I put things down and I forget that they are just out of the oven. So moving that out of the way. And then let's combine our shrimp. So I'm going to use these to get the shrimp into the pot with the fresh herbs. So the shrimp is cooked. The type of shrimp that I am using today is tails on, but I will leave that up to you. So I like the tails on because shrimp, actually they're little, I think it's called an exoskeleton, that little outside of the shrimp, right, that we tend to take off, it's full of flavor. So we lose out on a lot of flavor when we completely shell the shrimp. But if you can leave at least just the tails on, you're gonna get a little bit of that nice flavor in there. So that's why I like to do tails on. I do realize it's a little more inconvenient to eat, but it is gonna impart a bit more flavor into your dish. Okay, so this is done. I'll plate this up for you so you can see what we're looking at here. I'm out of spoons. There we go. I can use this one. All right. So you've got your protein in here. You've got some summer vegetable favorite things in here. Lots of herbs, right? Onion, fennel, tomato. Use other things too if you like. The eggplant, the zucchini. Okay. The quinoa is our choice today, but if you wanted to use the rice instead, feel free to do so. So you can see how you can enjoy, you know, even if you're struggling with your heart health or whatever is going on for you, you can still enjoy a lot of the summer bounty, and enjoy it intelligently. Have it in ways that, the flavor is bumped up and you're going to enjoy that flavor and not have so much sugar and salt and, kind of empty carbohydrates that don't have a lot of fiber in them. I mean, these dishes have tons of fiber, which we know is so important to heart health. They're full of vitamins and minerals from all of the fresh produce that we're using. And there's lots of protein as well with the shrimp, the quinoa, the cashews, the yogurt even. Yogurt, of course, has those wonderful probiotic qualities. So it's a nice thing to enjoy, something with probiotic qualities. Hopefully, ideally at least once or twice a day to make sure you're nourishing your microbiome. And then, of course, if it's the Mediterranean diet that we're looking at, we also have to look at stress. So taking that moment to connect with your plate, to connect with your community, to connect with yourself is so important as well. So with that, Catherine, any final questions or comments?
Yes, Chef Emily, you asked folks to volunteer what recipes appeal to them today. So actually all of them, but Margaret points out the shrimp. She really enjoys shrimp and she's trying that one. And Denise's comment is about trying all the recipes, but including the raw cashews, especially before her daughter eats all the cashews she specifically bought for these recipes.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's great, Denise. Well, at least your daughter has healthy snacking habits and is going for cashews and not, potato chips or something else. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have more classes coming up next week. 2 of our classes actually that were moved from last week. I think that's already next week, right, Catherine? We have Dr. Scott joining us in the kitchen to talk about inflammation and bone health. We have a class where we're really going to break down meat and understanding how much meat is too much meat, what's the right kind of meat. It's a very confusing world when it comes to that. So I'm excited to share some information with you there. And I think we have another class too, but I guess you will have to check the website to remember what that one is. So come on back. We hope to see you again soon. As always, it's such a pleasure to have you, and stay cool and refreshed on this warm summer day. So thank you, Catherine, for moderating, and I'll see you all again very soon.